Hey guys, what's up? It's Friday, which means Free Speed Friday, and I'm gonna give you guys my recommendation for tire pressure. Specifically, tire pressure that will enable you to go as fast as possible on race day. Okay guys, so in a previous video we talked about rolling resistance of tires and how important that was. I gave my recommendations for what tires I thought were fast currently on the market, and that can make a huge difference between, we're talking minutes within an Ironman race. I'm gonna link to that video. I'm gonna put it like up here somewhere and you can check that out if you guys are interested. But basically I give my recommendations for tires. There's a couple that, are more puncture resistant than others. So you may wanna use some in a race day and some, on particular training day. But today I want to talk about a similar topic and how tire pressure plays a key role in making you go faster on your particular race day. And the numbers are startling. I was very surprised to see on a smooth road, you can save, 8 or 9 watts just by having the proper tire pressure. So with that being said, in that video that I'm referring to, when we talked about tires, I may have said something silly like, as you increase tire pressure, rolling resistance goes down. And that is kind of like with all things within my videos, it's sort of true, right? So basically, if you were to start with, tire pressure of 50 and roll it over road, and you were to go, on a steel drum, which is how they test a lot of rolling resistance on tires, and you increase tire pressure, as you go to 140, you'll kind of see that exponential curve smooth out. You're going to see increases go quite a ways. As you increase tire pressure, your rolling resistance of your tire goes down. So that should make sense to us, right? So, as a tire is somewhat deflated, you're gonna have like more contact area with the road, right? So maybe the tire's deflated and you have all this contact area. And then you inflate it up to something very, very firm, and the contact area is like a point, right? So a very, very small amount of surface area. So there's just less, rubber meeting the road, right? So there's less resistance as you're rolling over the road. What we end up running into is this weird kind of phenomenon where it's like, yeah, you run a higher tire pressure, it's faster, it's a little less comfortable, but I know a lot of you guys are turning off the video, you're like, got it, roll super high tire pressure. I'm gonna go to my next race, I'm gonna be super uncomfortable, but I'm gonna be fast. And it turns out that's not true at all. So what happened was they started to look at some of this data where they were like, hey, we know if you roll, if you roll high PSI, you should run faster. And they started to look at it in like big classics races, like Roubaix, where they're going over cobbles and all this stuff. And they just kept saying like, every time we lower the tire pressure, these riders are riding faster, like just flat out riding faster at very low tire pressures. And that shouldn't be the case because we're testing rolling resistance and it's faster at higher tire pressures. So, what they've done is there's been a couple of, I would say, small studies, not a large amount of sample data, but what they're looking at is, I think the studies are well enough that we should talk about them, but what they looked at was like, hey, tire pressure, we're seeing the same thing, tire pressure up to a certain point is going to play a key role. And then all of a sudden, when you get on rougher roads, it actually pays huge dividends to actually not go past a certain point. So for example, if you had a very small pebble, you can think of it like, I don't know, in the article they gave the example of like a 5mm size, pebble or something like that. And I'll be sure to link to the article below here. It's definitely worth a read for sure. But as your tire is coming up to this pebble, it can do two things, right? So you can hit that pebble. If the tire is extremely firm, the whole weight of the bike and your weight, so that could be 200 pounds or whatever it is going up that 5mm and up and over that rock. So that's pretty difficult, right? So all the effort is going to be in going up and over an object. So that's a lot of wasted energy. Wasted energy means wasted speed. Okay, so the other thing, which is kind of like the whole point of having tires, is that you could hit that particular pebble or rock or whatever it is, the tire could deform. You may go up 1 millimeter or something like that, not 5 millimeters, but basically the brunt of the pebble itself is going to be conformed by the tire, depending on like tire compliance and things like that, and your tire would roll through sort of the pebble itself without you kind of having to be lifted up. So a lot of this is probably like, oh, this is obvious information. Mountain bikers, cyclocross riders, gravel riders, like they've all known this for a long time, right? Like you have more contact area, you have better grip, all these things with lower tire pressure. So for us in the triathlon world, where we're riding often very smooth roads, what tire pressure should we go for? And it's going to depend on a lot of things. One, your personal weight. Two, I would say, is the width of your tires. And then number 3 would be like how smooth the surface is that we're rolling over. So let's kind of like try to address some of these, and I'll just kind of take my personal self, because you know, I'm all about myself trying to kind of dial in exactly how much pressure I should have to go fastest, you know, when I'm out there racing. I think maybe a week or so ago, I did a race and I thought the roads were very, very smooth. So I set my tire pressure at 110. Where you'll see that kind of like, let's call it like that key point in tire pressure for a smooth road at my particular weight, we think it's about 115-ish. So again, we're having our exponential drop down with increased tire pressure, and then all of a sudden, because of rougher roads, we see an increase in rolling resistance, right? Because we're having to go up and over particular objects. So on a smooth road, that particular like, I don't know, key number for me was somewhere around 115, and as you have rougher roads, that number is going to move further and further back. It's really going to be hard to know what that number is, but do know that there's a spike. So the curve is going to look, maybe I'll put a chart up, but there's going to be a curve that looks like this, and then all of a sudden it's going to spike up. So it's kind of like a V chart, right? Where at the bottom point of the V is like that perfect number where we have our best rolling resistance, and we don't have an increase in rolling resistance because we're running too high of a tire pressure and we're going over, you know, these very, very small obstacles in the road. So the study that I looked at kind of 3 different road types. They went from like a very, very rough road to a what they would call like a mediumly rough road, like chip seal kind of stuff, and then what they thought was like a smooth road, and this was like freshly paved smooth road. And what they saw was that kind of key location was about 15 psi difference between the 3 different road types. So that helps us kind of informed guesstimate on what we're gonna recommend for our tire pressure. And then we know that tire width itself is, again, it's about a 10 to 15 PSI difference for suggestions. So wider tires, lower PSI. This here, I'm running like 23s. I bet a lot of you guys are running 25 millimeter tires. So check your tire width, but know that probably about 15 PSI difference between, you know, going from 23 to 25 to 28. And then weight. So for every 20 pounds or so, my racing weight is typically, like, I aim for about 150 pounds for me, and then bike weight too would play into account to this. So we're probably looking at about 170 pounds of my weight and then the bike's weight. So that's gonna play a role. So again, and it's a little safer to err on the side of less tire pressure. So for me personally, I'm gonna aim for 110 for tire pressure, and then basically drop it down as road conditions worsen. So if the road's a little worse, I'm thinking like maybe 100 PSI. And if the road conditions are really bad, then, you know, probably 85-ish, maybe 90. And then typically I guess I don't really race on road conditions that are that rough. So probably my range is going to be in that like 100 to 110 for most of kind of like those good racing condition roads that I typically race on. And then in training, maybe softer, just because it's just so much nicer to ride softer tires. You'll probably have increased endurance because you're not, you know, dealing with just road vibrations. Another thing to quickly mention would be that a lot of road cyclists should consider going with a different tire pressure in the front tire versus the rear tire. You basically have more weight on your rear tire, you know, because that's where the big caboose is basically sitting. And the front tire, you know, should have less tire pressure, maybe, and I would suggest about 5 psi difference there, whereas the rear tire a little bit more just because of the additional weight, and that also should help with traction and things like that with the front wheel. So time trialist, because we're up on the aero bars, leaning over on those, hopefully in aero position as much as possible, I would say go ahead and just keep both tires even. So again, each of us are different weights. Each of us are riding potentially different tires and wheels and tire sizes and things like that. So your number won't be my number. And then on any given day, your number might be slightly different. But I think that should give us a place to start. And again, I'll try to link to the study if you guys want to dig into this stuff a little bit more. The one that I really liked was by this company called Silica. They make a lot of cool like bike parts, really nice stuff. But I'll link to it in the to the article below, because that's where I'm referencing some of this information and some of these numbers that I'm getting. There are other people that have done studies too. Actually, the guy that does that that blog, Bike Blather, I think it is. I talked about it in the previous video, but he does some studies on this stuff as well, and it's super interesting, right? So the fact that there's this sweet spot that can save us like as much as 10 watts, which, I mean, to me, I feel like that's crazy. It was like, the numbers that I looked at were like, hey, on a smooth surface, being off by just 10 psi was costing, a rider 9 watts. So it is a significant amount of savings if you're willing to kind of try to figure out where that sweet spot is going to be for you. And, and the tire recommendations for each particular tire brand are usually pretty good, but I think it's still worth kind of tweaking the numbers and trying to find a spot that you feel is really perfect for you. So hopefully this helps. If it does, please consider subscribing if you're new here. There's, I think, like a bell in the top corner as well. If you hit that, you'll be notified of new videos. So usually I think, you'll get some sort of message on your phone if you subscribe on your phone, or potentially in your browser if you're watching these videos on your browser. And I absolutely love it when you guys hit the like button as well. So I do appreciate that. And thanks so much for watching. I hope to make a couple more videos like this in the future, and I would love for you guys to join me on the journey. So comment below, just leave something below like, hey, like I found that this tire pressure for me is the key spot for me. And then definitely your 2 cents. I think it's definitely what I'd like to do is develop kind of like a community of people that are saying like, hey, tire pressure, don't forget this, Matt, like you rolled through this video, but you forgot these key points. So I love it when you guys comment. If you guys, I'll try to engage for sure with what you guys are talking about. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you guys next time.